Karate Kid was a 1984 movie about a boy named Daniel LaRusso who, to better defend himself from bullies, begins learning karate from a man named Mr. Miyagi. Where Daniel expects to find some tips on how to punch good, and we as an audience expect to find a shallow 80s-fueled misunderstanding of martial arts, instead we're shown an interesting man with more nuanced things to teach him and us. The Daniel learns to defend himself and ultimately wins a tournament against his rival, Johnny Lawrence of Cobra Kai. He also learns about the nature of violence and most importantly gains a beloved father figure who would go on to influence literally generations of troubled teens long after his passing. We'll get to you! The Karate Kid franchise would go on to iterate on these same basic themes in every inception. In Karate Kid Part 2, Daniel LaRusso would face a more ruthless opponent than Johnny Lawrence, Chosen Toguchi, who was the lackey of Sato. However, in Karate Kid Part 2, where Sato ultimately lets go of his anger at Mr. Miyagi, Chosen grows more and more resentful and hateful towards Daniel, ultimately trying to kill him! Despite the threat Chosen poses, Daniel ultimately lets him go. In Karate Kid Part 3, Daniel LaRusso finds himself back in LA, facing a guy called Mike Barnes, the new and improved Johnny Lawrence. Where Johnny had moments of hesitation, vulnerability, and shame, Mike has none. To better defend himself, Daniel breaks away from the more peaceful teachings of Mr. Miyagi and instead turns to a man named Terry Silver. Terry Silver soon reveals himself to be a crazed, coked-up maniac that was teaching Daniel wrong, as a joke. Having been taught to tap into his anger, Daniel struggles to find his way back to Mr. Miyagi and his teachings, but eventually he does, and he wins the All-Valley Karate Tournament for a second time, freeze frame. Then, in 2018, YouTube Red began production on Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai was sold to an audience as a fun, shallow 80s nostalgia YouTube show where Johnny, now in his 50s, is positioned as Mr. Miyagi to a young boy named Miguel Diaz. What you expect to be a mostly joking show about the inept abilities of Johnny Lawrence as he tries to take on the role of teacher is actually a pretty nuanced show about the value of mentorship and the cycle of abuse. While Mr. Miyagi is a meme, he's also a fantastic character from a movie that has a lot of heart and also a lot to say. Cobra Kai manages to create a story about how mentorship can not only benefit the mentee, but the mentor as well, as they're given a way to re-examine their past through the lives of someone younger. While the show may initially seem to be about Johnny, in reality, it's about the lives of several teenagers. They're pulled between the same ideologies as their predecessors. Essentially, a bunch of troubled teenagers are taught how to fight each other with wildly different martial arts and, as a result, wildly different ideologies. Eli begins as a meek kid with a scar. He's frequently picked on until he's told to join Cobra Kai with Miguel to gain some confidence. Spoilers, he gains a lot of confidence.
You see that? Doesn't matter if you're a loser, or a nerd, or a freak. All that matters is that you become badass.
At some point, he's encouraged by Johnny to get something weirder than his scar. So he does, and he gets a tattoo and a mohawk. From there on, we see Eli's confidence growing until he becomes more and more physical, leaning into Kreese's teachings the same way Johnny did back in the day.
True Cobra feels no sympathy for its males.
Ultimately culminating in his attacking his former best friend, terrorizing him, and breaking his arm. Tori loves this. She thinks it's great, she's having such a good time. We'll get to her. It's only when Dimitri, his childhood friend, is threatened by someone other than him that he admits to his conflicted feelings and saves Dimitri. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, hey Marina, is this show just a Star War? And the answer is yes, Cobra Kai is definitely a Star War. Are you disappointed by all of the Star Wars movies? Then watch Cobra Kai. It's just Star Wars! From there on, he has an uphill battle, not necessarily with Dimitri, who pretty much immediately forgives him, but with everybody else. At the beginning of the show, Eli and Dimitri are shown, let's say, gawking at two girls at their school. Eli eventually gets said girl when he becomes Hawk. I don't know how to explain what happens when he gets a mohawk, I guess, and he gains a lot of confidence. However, as he becomes more and more aggressive throughout the show, she tells him the person he's becoming isn't okay with her, and she breaks up with him. Dimitri, on the other hand, is revealed to be dating the other girl after picking up karate and gaining some much-needed confidence. The show shows you that what these girls like about these two boys isn't punching and aggression, but self-confidence.
Biggest battle is always the one within.
An important lesson to teenage boys. Here, the girls aren't being treated like trophies, they're being treated like real women with agency and opinions on who they want to date and why. And their reasons are not only understandable, but also realistic. It tells us these girls like confidence, not arrogance and aggression. For all intensive purposes, Hawk's storyline has sort of come to an end in season 4, and I kind of want it to stay that way. Also, did you know Hawk is in the Karate Kid reboot with Jaden Smith? Here he is. That's him. However, Hawk aside, there are other parts of the show that play a longer, more intricate game with us. Robbie Keane, Johnny's son, begins the show as a petty thief on his way to becoming a career criminal. But then he meets Daniel LaRusso and straight up commits to being a good boy. And that's pretty much where Robbie stays for 2 seasons, harassed by former friends, but ultimately ignoring his father and trying to get his life on track with the karate Daniel LaRusso teaches him. But it's when through a series of misunderstandings, Robbie and Miguel get into a fight, and Robbie, in the heat of the moment, kicks Miguel off a 2nd-story railing at school and breaks Miguel's back. It's honestly so upsetting. No, small BB, no, don't hurt him. It's so upsetting. It's a real accident. Robbie loses his temper in the moment and gets caught up in the fight. It's very human. It's an interesting choice for the show because our other characters, like Miguel, were never really that bad of a boy, you know? Miguel only gets close to losing his temper when he's drunk. Eli even doesn't really lose his temper. He gets caught up in his ego. For Robbie, he just sees red, and it's very real and very human. Some people are more prone to anger than others, and because it's such a volatile emotion, we can tend not to be very sympathetic to those people. Robbie ends up in juvie. During his time there, our 3 mentors representing our 3 schools of thought, Miyagi, helmed by Daniel, Eagle Fang, don't worry about that, helmed by Johnny, and Cobra Kai, now helmed by Kreese, each visit him. Robbie rejects Daniel's peaceful Miyagi-Do because that's the school he was training under when he lost his temper. He then rejects his father and his school of training, ultimately taking Kreese's advice and tapping into his aggression and anger to survive his time in juvie.
Use your aggressive feelings.
Which, in Robbie's current dog-eat-dog world, it really works out for him. This is another point at which the show starts to turn on its nuanced, intricate, pretty little head. It acknowledges that some things can be solved with violence, nay, even should be solved with violence. You realize Johnny is so adamant about the benefits of Cobra Kai and Eagle Fang, don't worry about Eagle Fang, because he was too timid and shy before learning martial arts, because he too was abused not just by Kreese but by his stepfather. A great turning point for Robbie is when he begins mentoring a young boy who's going through the cycle of abuse we've seen so many times on this show by now. It helps him wake up and realize that his anger can't be controlled by indulging in it. Cobra Kai uses the themes of mentorship really intelligently, and how the act of caring for someone else can be healing, especially since mentorship in the show is pretty commonly used as a device to help characters realize their flaws as they watch someone younger slowly become flawed in the same way. It's a really intelligent way of going about a redemption arc for any character. It's not until Robbie needs Daniel's direction that Daniel picks up karate again. It's not until Johnny That's a good name. It's not until Johnny gets attached to Miguel that he re-examines his life and his relationship with Kreese. It's a better way to do it than someone insisting over and over that someone change and re-examine their life, because it puts all the agency in the hands of the character that needs to change. A brief aside here about Chosen Toguchi from Karate Kid Part 2. I find that media rarely has anything nuanced to say about anger issues and abuse, other than don't have them and don't do them. The subject of abuse in Cobra Kai is so good because it understands that while some people might be too set in their ways, it still acknowledges them as people with pasts and reasons to be the way that they are. A great example of this is Chosen Toguchi. When we see Chosen again in Season 3, instead of the absolute psycho that we got in Karate Kid Part 2, instead we're treated to this slightly weird, pretty chilled out old man. In the 35 years since we saw him, he mellowed out somehow. The conflict here in Chosen being reintroduced isn't that he continues to be dangerous, but instead that he isn't, and that's a problem for Daniel.
Biggest battle is always the one within.
Daniel struggles with the idea that this guy who tried to kill him got his life on track, and being angry with him isn't really warranted anymore. Chosen figured his shit out, and that's like a good thing, right? It's genius. Problem is, what's Daniel supposed to do with all this anger he had for this guy, when it's clear he doesn't need to hold on to it anymore?
Honk.
You see this kind of thing in the show all over the place. The conflict ultimately isn't in rivalries, it's in how to deal with your anger.
Biggest battle is always the one within.
The show bamboozles you into thinking that the next rivalry will be Miguel and Robbie. And while they do fight and they do have their tension, the show primarily focuses on the rivalry of Tori Nichols and Samantha LaRusso. Or at least I think it does, you know? If I'm being honest, Sam and Tori are kind of a tired trope. It's the girl fight, two girls that are the only types of girl that girls can be, the brunette, traditionally feminine, good girl, and the dangerous, more masculine blonde. It's one of the reasons I've always hated the bubblegum girl and the goth girlfriend trope. Women don't only come in two flavors. But where Cobra Kai shines is in taking those typical archetypes that would normally make you roll your eyes and earnestly commits to figuring out why they are the way that they are. In Cobra Kai, the fact that these two girls are at opposite ends of the spectrum further fuels their anger at each other and inferiority to one another. Tori is introduced in Season 2 and is generally an interesting next step for the cast because she steps up the villainy of Cobra Kai. Before, they were bullies that occasionally beat you up. Tori's presence turns them into full-on terrorists. And you're watching the show, and you're thinking to yourself, man, redeeming this one's gonna be a doozy.
I know the situation with your mom is tough. A judge is gonna take one look at you and laugh you straight out of court.
Mrs. Russo, I need your help.
Damn it, they got me again! Tori encourages Eli to break Dimitri's arm. She leads an invasion of Sam's house, she uses a fight at school as an excuse to permanently scar Sam. All while this is happening, we're being given glimpses of Tori's life. It's not great. Sam even has a panic attack after being ambushed by Cobra Kai in a laser tag arena. Actually, no, they weren't ambushed. She thought it would be a good idea to fight Cobra Kai, and then it turned out to be a bad idea.
We're not on school property. It's our chance to fight back.
I don't know what she was thinking. Tori only begins to mellow out when Sam's mother, Amanda, shows some sympathy for her and what she's going through. It continues our through line of adults trying to break the cycle of abuse before it's too late, and our themes of mentorship. Tori is initially not receptive to this, but eventually seeing that Amanda's sympathy comes from a place of understanding her anger, Tori's life does start to turn around, and her aggression, especially towards Samantha, lowers. But therein lies our conflict again. If Tori mellows out due to nothing Samantha's done, what does Samantha do with all of her anger?
Biggest battle is always the one within.
I don't think I ever gave Sam enough credit for being a really interesting character when I first started the show. I think everybody just sort of takes for granted in the show that she's going to be okay no matter what, when in reality, she's already pretty aggressive. She's already led Miyagi-Do into several altercations. She has several outbursts, she gets into several fights, but nobody ever really sits down to talk to her about it, which brings us to the closest she's ever had to a good mentor for her temperament, Johnny Lawrence.
Nice move, LaRusso! Gotta grow a pair of legs. Nice kick, LaRusso.
After a lifetime of being taught Miyagi-Do, Samantha really starts to benefit from being taught by Johnny. She gains a lot more confidence, she becomes more aggressive. There are some downsides to it, of course. She ends up in a lot more fights.
How many times we stand up to Cobra Kai? If we don't strike back, they're gonna keep coming at us. I'm coming for you, bitch. I'm doing what Johnny said. I'm not taking your shit anymore.
But ultimately, she ends up a better fighter in the tournament and seems to have come into her own in a way that I think is ultimately a good thing.
Use everything you've learned from me and Sensei Lawrence. All of it.
That's right.
Season 4 comes to a really interesting close as far as Tori and Samantha are concerned. The final fight of Season 4 is in this super puffed up All-Valley Championship. It's between the two girls, not Miguel and Robbie. The final match of Season 4 is the most sphincter-tightening match I have seen on Cobra Kai. Obviously, I don't know where Tori and Sam's stories end. I want Sam to go full dark side. I want her to be so mean. I want her to be extremely mean. But I'm really excited to find out. I like making these videos about things that I like rather than things I want to criticize because they force me as a writer to explore the depth of why I like something and why it resonates with me. I know I like Cobra Kai because I have my own issues with anger and my own intense love of the physical and emotional benefits of martial arts, but it's more than that. I watch martial arts movies and TV shows all the time. I think the truth is, there's nothing relatable about Donnie Yen or Tony Jaa. They're too good. You see them fight and you think of it as something so complicated and so impressive. Picking up Kung Fu is pointless. You'll never be that good. These professionals make martial arts strangely inaccessible. The fact that Cobra Kai isn't populated with champion martial artists is one of its greatest strengths, because it shows you the real-world benefits of casually practicing martial arts. In the show, we see Dimitri go from someone who can barely execute the easiest block to someone holding his own in a tournament.
He's pretty good. So are you.
There's no better example of this principle in practice than the actors who play Robbie and Samantha. Robbie's actor goes from someone who has taken a shine to the stunt work he's being given to someone I legitimately would not want to fight. We see Samantha's actress go from someone who is honestly not that great in the first season to someone who is 10 times faster, throwing way harder punches, and is now part of the best fight scene in the whole show. Cobra Kai shines because it's down to earth. I've latched onto it because I will never be Donnie Yen or Tony Jaa, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, Chow Yun-Fat, Bruce Lee, or Cynthia Rothrock. But I could be a Dimitri, and so could you.
Winner!
The best of the best make the benefits of casual martial arts seem inaccessible. But seeing young adults take a shine to it in real time really shows you what casual martial arts can do for the average person like you or me. It can give you peace of mind, confidence, willingness to stand up for yourself, the willingness to stand up for others, camaraderie, friendship, resilience, and most of all, a better understanding of ourselves.
The biggest battle is always the one within.
No. I didn't call her a bitch. I said she was bitching at me. You're firing me because of that bitch?
You seriously never owned a computer before?
Yeah, I'm not a nerd.
Honk! Eagles don't have fangs.
Light beer is for pussies.
Gotta grow a pair of legs. Appreciate you coming in, but there are no girls in Cobra Kai.
Why not?
Same reason there aren't women in the Army. Doesn't make sense. With all the buttons, I still can't find the internet.
The Karate Kid is about Keisuke Miyagi, an immigrant who fought against his own people in World War II while his wife lost a child in an internment camp. Noriyuki Morita was nominated for an Academy Award for his performance. Ralph Macchio showed up.
Biggest battle is always the one within.